guys. My name
Hello.
is Therese, and I'm from The Beat. Lovely to speak with you today. I watched UMMA yesterday, and it really blew me away with all of the layers that are in
Thank
this
you.
film. I really want to talk to you specifically about some of the more mythic elements and
Mhm.
the inclusion of the Gumiho, which is like nine-tailed fox,
Mhm.
and where that inspiration came from.
Yeah. So when I was writing this script, one of the things that I went through is the sort of just the experience of, I grew up in Chicago with my parents, and they had a lot of this sort of like Korean imagery around the house through, wall art or just, decor. And it never occurred to me to ask about what they were. So like the masks, like there was always these like, like framed little masks. And sometimes I would see them as keychains, and it seemed kind of kitschy. But then the more research I did, I was like, oh, these masks have like a very long, rich tradition in Korean culture that I just wasn't aware of. And so for me, it was this interesting experience of like, I'm Korean, but how is this stuff so sort of unfamiliar to me? And so when I was researching a little bit about sort of Korean folklore, I came across the nine-tailed fox, which I had never seen before. And so, I'm not really familiar with anime, and I think there's like a Pokemon character that is a nine-tailed fox. But since I wasn't aware of it, it was the first time that I had seen this image, and I thought this is so, it's so striking. And I started asking my um, cousins, aunts, and uncles, and parents, just like, oh, do you know this nine-tailed fox? And they're like, yeah, of course. Like, yeah, we grew up with this, but I had never even heard of it. And so it just kind of made me realize a little bit of that sort of disconnect of, my experience growing up in America versus their experience growing up in Korea. And that even though, we share the same blood, that there's a lot of things that I don't know. And so I really wanted that moment that the nine-tailed fox shows up in the movie when Chris sees it, to really reflect, my own experience confronting this unfamiliar image. And for her, it feels foreign and unfamiliar. But by the time we reach the end of the movie, these Korean elements is something that she embraces. But really, that moment is supposed to feel like, a little bit of a non sequitur of like, she's not really sure what this thing is, even though it
Mm,
has this very rich history in Korean culture.
gotcha. Yeah, for sure. And I mean, we have it also in Chinese culture as well. So I was like, oh my God, I love this that we all share some aspects together.
Yeah.
I really also want to talk to you about working with Sam Raimi as a producer and if he imparted any advice for you when you were beginning this journey.
Yeah, sounds great. The way that we got the project to him was actually through his producing partner at Raimi Productions, and she is a young woman of color, and she immediately latched onto this project and really, felt connected to it. And I thought it was just such a reminder that, it's not just about getting diverse creators; it's about getting diverse people in the positions that can make decisions, that can have sort of influence over what projects get greenlit. And so I think this was such a clear example of that by him hiring a young woman of color, that she would be, a bit more open and understanding of other different types of projects coming his way. And so through her, we were able to get it to Sam, and he came on board, and he was really helpful in the development process in terms of, making sure that we didn't compromise the relationship arc that the characters needed to go through, where that they can come to a place at the end where it's not just about everyone dies at the end, or like you banish the demon to hell kind of ending, where it's really about like finding the humanity in these characters, even the ones that are supernatural, so that so that it can feel a little bit more unexpected in terms of the closure that these characters need to move on. So yeah, he was very supportive of that.
Yeah, and so I have a question just about like, what do you think makes these stories so enduring? Like these stories about generational trauma and healing.
Yeah, I mean, it really is something that I think a lot of people can relate to. And I think particularly, and I can only speak from my own experience, but like for me, coming from a sort of immigrant background where you know there's a little bit of a language barrier between myself and my parents, and then particularly my grandparents, that it was hard to know them in a way that I think people without that language barrier, are able to have more of an access to them. And so I think just getting older, it was very much something that I kept getting more curious about, of like, what was their experience? Because like, I don't really have context in terms of their childhood, because they grew up in a country that I've only spent, like I was born there. I came here when I was 3 months old, and then I visited once when I was like in third grade. So like I had very limited access to just that environment. And so it's hard for me to kind of grasp like what that upbringing actually was. But the more that I find out about it, the more I can start to get a clearer picture of who my parents are. And then that also helping me to understand, or are there elements, that I have either embraced or rejected? Why is that? And do I have to question the things that I have either embraced or rejected? And do I have to think about it in a different way? And so it was a really great experience, just being able to like give myself the permission to say like, yeah, let's really kind of try to embrace this imagery. And it was very important to me just also to not only use the imagery for like a horror kind of scares context, that really, it was something that the characters needed to be able to embrace by the end of the movie.
Great. Well, thank you so much for speaking with me, and I can't wait for everybody to see this film, and I really appreciate your time.
Thanks, Therese.